But today I will just be continuing where I was going from. I don't know what I'm saying. Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I just want to continue looking at how to date your photos, and today I'll be looking at women's fashion. So last week I did some sort of general chit chat about things that you might want to consider if you're dating your photos by style. So if you want to go back and watch that video, I will link it above, that way I think. But today I will just dive straight in. So a couple of weeks ago I also did one about different types of photos and also how to sort of analyze a photo, and I've attached a little worksheet to that one, so there's that one as well you might want to look at. I'll link that above too. Okay, so before I dive into today's video though, I will also ask, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell because it will update you of all of my future videos. Okay, all of that being said, now I will just move on into the video. So I'm going to look at women's fashion, and I'll just sort of go across each decade and talk about some of the styles that were popular and fashionable at that time. Alright, and starting with the 1850s. So in the 1850s, people were more and more layering petticoats to give this really full look. So some people who were like really fashionable would even layer like 14 petticoats, like just for that look. And that would have been so heavy to walk around in, but you know, pain is beauty, right? Anyway, with the 1850s also came the crinoline, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, ignore it if it's wrong. But it was sort of a garment that was a bit more stiff. It was made out of horsehair usually, and it gave that full shape. So you only had to wear sort of one of it rather than wearing 14 of it. So it was a bit lighter, but it took a while to trickle out to the colonies. So it sort of may not have been around in the earliest days here, but they became more and more popular because of course they were more lightweight and still gave that full look that they so desired in the 1850s. Also in the 1850s, women tended to have a center part in their hair, and then the hair was quite smooth and it would be smoothed out to the sides, and often it would cover the ears as well. And also sometimes it was attached at the back with a net. Only young girls kind of wore ringlets on the sides after the 1850s. That look really went out for older women. But women would sometimes wear decorations in the sides of their hair or in the back. Also, some accessories from the 1850s were dome-shaped parasols with fringing around the outside, and large brooches that were worn at the throat, and gloves. So women often wore quite small gloves because the fashion at that time was tiny hands. That was considered something desirable, so people wore tiny gloves. Okay, the 1860s, they still had that full look with the crinoline, but it shifted sort of more towards the back, and sort of during the 1860s that became a bustle kind of shape. So it was flatter at the front and then stuck out more at the back. Lighter materials were in fashion, such as taffeta and silks, sometimes with stripes, though the stripes went out in the later 1860s. Also, day dresses tended to get a bit shorter, so previously dresses are on the floor length, and the day dresses came up to sort of more like ankle length during the 1860s. Most of the bodices were high at the neck and buttoned down with a brooch in the middle. The hairstyle of the 1860s was a, I don't know how you pronounce this word, chignon? Chignon? I feel like it's a French kind of word. Anyway, that was the style of the time. It was tied back, and sometimes they also had ringlets at the back, so the hair was all shifted back. They also tended to have rows of curls around the front of their hair, or sometimes a plait across the front there. Tortoiseshell combs were also really popular at that time, and so hair was always kept back off the ears, and so big earrings kind of came into fashion too. Alright, the 1870s saw the introduction of the sewing machine, so dresses became much more elaborate, more so than really any other time. Suddenly people could go a lot further with what they were designing, so They tended to add things like fringing and embroidery and braiding and piping and anything else that they could think of. The hair was parted in the center and then pulled back, and ringlets were often at the top of the head. They often used some artificial hair to achieve this kind of look. Hair was always back off the ears. They tended to wear earrings, so you never saw anyone covering their ears during this period. Also, fringes and forehead curls were very popular during this era as well. And hats kind of got smaller, so bonnets actually shrunk in size and were indistinguishable really from hats. And hats tend to be small and didn't really fit on the head. They more like perched on top of it. It was more of an ornamental thing than a functional thing. The 1870s was also all about accessories, so small muffs and fans with elaborate kind of trimmings on them, cameos, velvet hairbands and jeweled pins, things like that. Okay, in the 1880s, the skirts sort of shrunk a bit again, but the bustle kind of came way back into fashion and it got even bigger. So the dresses were kind of flat at the front, but then really elaborate at the back, like really full bustles. But as the 1880s went on and towards the end, they got smaller again, and they just used a bit of padding rather than all of the crinolines that they used before. Also in the 1880s, they started to play around a lot more with textures of the fabrics. So they would often get fabrics of the same color but of different textures and kind of put them all into one dress. Also, the sleeves during the 1880s were crazy tight. They were so tight that they restricted people's arm movement, and so you couldn't really bend your elbows or lift your arms above your head or anything like that. The hairstyles were pretty plain. They tended to just sort of have a close sort of bun with a frizzy fringe. It was a lot more natural. Using artificial hair became really unfashionable, so you didn't tend to see it anymore by the 1880s. Fur coats became fashionable, and so did boas, like made out of feathers or sometimes other things like silk or furs or velvet or even lace, and they would have a matching muff to go with it. By the 1890s, the bustle was completely gone and the hourglass shape was in fashion. So you got this more fluid kind of S shape in the clothing. Some of the looks were kind of masculine with like tweed, and they might have a high sort of masculine collar with a tie. Another popular look from the 1890s was to have a second layer over the top of the bustle made out of like net or lace. The hairstyles became fuller and looser and with waves. Sometimes they'd use padding in this too. And hats became really popular and bigger, and they had crazy trimmings like birds and flowers and other sort of nature things and bows. And fur jackets and coats also remained popular during this period. So in 1900, the sort of silhouette became more willowy and feminine. So they moved away from that sort of hourglass look and went to a slimmer sort of shape with flared hems at the bottom. They're all about sort of straighter lines and higher waists. After 1906, the bodices didn't really have so much boning in them anymore. Boning really went out of fashion. And sleeves widened, I'm sure, thankfully. But they still liked really long slim sleeves, and the ones that had a little V shape on the hand as well. They also had wide sleeves, like kimono kind of sleeves, so there was a bit more experimentation with the sleeve. The decoration included embroidery and beading, spangles, lace, frills, pleating, and as the years went on, there was feathers and piping and sequins and so on. The hair was worn fuller at the sides and higher at the top, and so they started using false hair again to achieve that big look again. They also wore loads of jewelry, so rings, bracelets, delicate necklaces made out of beads and metal as well, brooches at the throat, fob watches pinned to the coats, huge earrings and hair ornaments, just you name it, they love their jewelry. Also, they wore like large stoles and boas, and their handbags were made out of gold mesh and beading, things like that. All right, in the 1910s, their day dresses started to be bought ready-made in just one piece. They also got to be a lot plainer and more shapeless, especially as they moved into wartime. They were really like more loose fitting and with higher hemlines. During wartime also, the hair was often worn shorter and closer to the head, and people also started to wear veils on their hats again, and berets also became kind of popular during this period. Okay, that's about all for women's fashion. Obviously I could come all the way up to the present day, but I more wanted to look at historical photos because I realized that those are the ones that people have the most trouble with. That's just really a bit of an overview of women's fashion. There is so much more that I could go into, so let me know if you want a more in-depth video with even more information in it, or if that was enough for you. I hope that you have a great day. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button because it really helps my videos when you do. I hope that you have a good one, whatever you are doing, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye!